Hi, I'm Jason and welcome to DS University. In this video, we are going to cover the steps on how to rebuild the eMP metering pump. The rebuild can be performed with the pump still mounted on the wall. It's best to perform the rebuild in a clean area, so make sure to cover your chemical bucket so you don't lose any parts. To start, you will need a 3mm Allen wrench, diagonal pliers or cutters, thread seal tape, a small towel, a flat blade screwdriver, the replacement pump head, and the tubing kit. Maintenance tip. The simplest way to perform maintenance on the eMP metering pump is to run fresh water through the unit between uses. This helps prevent buildup inside the foot filter, pump head, injection valve, and tubing, allowing for these components to last longer. Pump head. Before rebuilding the eMP metering pump, disconnect the unit from the power supply and turn off the water. In order to remove the pump head, use your finger or a flat blade screwdriver and take off the 4 white caps at the corners of the pump head. Discard the white caps and locate the pump head screws. Please pay careful attention through the removal of the used pump head and connected tubing. Using the Allen wrench, loosen each screw, but do not entirely remove them. Only loosen until the pump head can be removed by hand from the pump itself. Do not remove the pump head yet. Locate the used rigid discharge tubing connected to the old injection valve. Use the diagonal pliers or cutters to cut the tube as close to the old injection valve as possible. Keep the tube upright to ensure no remaining chemical spills out. Set the diagonal pliers down and use the same hand to remove the pump head along with the connected tubing and foot filter. They should all come off as one piece. Once removed, check the back side of the pump head to see if the blue O-ring is in the groove. If the O-ring is there, then discard the pump head along with the blue O-ring, connected tubing, and foot filter. If the blue O-ring is not there, still discard the pump head and connected items, but check to see if the O-ring is stuck to the eMP pump. If so, remove and discard the blue O-ring now. Using the small towel, wipe clean the diaphragm and any other chemical-stricken parts on the pump. Unscrew, disconnect, and discard the old injection valve from the installation saddle or T. Locate the pump head bag along with the 4 new small white caps. Take the 4 new small white caps out of its bag and set the white caps aside. Take the new pump head out of its bag and turn the pump head over so you are looking at the back side of the pump head. Check to see if the large blue O-ring sits in the groove. If not, look to see if it fell out in the pump head bag or call Dilution Solutions for assistance at 1-800-451-6628. Insert the large blue O-ring into the groove on the back side of the pump head. To install the new pump head, align it so the Y shape points upward on the eMP metering pump. Use the Allen wrench to carefully hand tighten the 4 pump head screws in a crisscross pattern until evenly snug. Do not over-tighten. This keeps the head aligned and on straight. To finish up, take the 4 new small white caps you set aside earlier and put one over each screw. Discharge valve. To continue the rebuild, locate the discharge valve at the top of the pump head. Remove the discharge valve tube nut, collar, and nozzle. Set all 3 aside. Make sure to not lose the blue O-ring underneath the tube nozzle and sitting on the discharge valve. Open the tubing kit and take out the rigid polyethylene discharge tubing. Set the tubing kit aside. Using diagonal pliers, cut and remove the string holding the tubing together. Slide the outside opening of the tube nut onto one end of the rigid polyethylene discharge tubing. Slide the collar onto the tube and make sure the collar's crown is pointing away from the tube nut. Grab the nozzle and insert the pointed end into the opening of the same tube. Push the collar and nozzle together as close as possible. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle to compress the collar and nozzle tight together, forming a ferrule connection. Attach the tube and tube connections onto the discharge valve by hand tightening the tube nut. Do not cross-thread nor over-tighten. If the tube nut is not securing, recheck the ferrule connection. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle once more to compress the collar and nozzle together. Retighten the tube nut until secure. Injection valve. To rebuild this section, take the new injection valve out of the tubing kit and remove the tube nut, collar, and nozzle. Set them aside, but make sure not to lose them. Take the thread seal tape and wrap it around the threads of the injection valve for the necessary size, either 3/8 or 1/2 inch. Install and hand tighten the injection valve into the installation saddle or T in the supply line. Once again, do not over-tighten. Next, grab the rigid polyethylene discharge tube connected to the discharge valve. Using diagonal pliers or cutters, cut the tube so that it runs comfortably from the discharge valve to the injection valve. If the tubing is too snug, the tubing connection will come loose and produce a leak. Reattach the tube connections onto the loose end of the connected discharge tubing and be mindful of the orientation for the tubing connections. Push the collar and nozzle together as close as possible. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle to compress the collar and nozzle tight together, forming a ferrule connection. Attach the tube and tube connections onto the injection valve by hand tightening the tube nut. Do not cross-thread nor over-tighten. If the tube nut is not securing, recheck the ferrule connection. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle once more to compress the collar and nozzle together. Retighten the tube nut until secure. Suction valve. Rebuild the suction valve by locating the suction valve at the bottom of the pump head and remove the tube nut, collar, and nozzle. Set the connections aside and make sure not to lose them. Make sure not to lose the blue O-ring directly at the bottom of the suction valve. Remove the clear, flexible PVC tubing from the tubing kit. Using diagonal pliers, cut and remove the string holding the tubing together. Attach the tubing connections onto the loose end of the tube and be mindful of their orientation. Push the collar and nozzle together as close as possible. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle to compress the collar and nozzle tight together, forming a ferrule connection. Attach the tube and tube connections onto the suction valve by hand tightening the tube nut. Do not cross-thread nor over-tighten. If the tube nut is not securing, recheck the ferrule connection. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle once more to compress the collar and nozzle together. Retighten the tube nut until secure. Foot filter. To rebuild the foot filter, cut the PVC suction tubing connected to the suction valve so that the foot filter will comfortably sit in the chemical bucket in a vertical position. Grab the foot filter from the tubing kit and remove its tube nut, collar, and nozzle. Set the connections aside. Grab the foot filter and shake it back and forth. You should hear a ceramic ball moving freely inside. If not, separate the foot filter into 3 pieces by popping the filter basket from the filter body. The filter seat may stick to the filter body. Make sure it rests in the filter basket instead to avoid losing the ceramic ball. Set the filter body aside and locate the ceramic ball in the filter seat. If there is no ceramic ball, call Dilution Solutions at 1-800-451-6628 for assistance. Pull the filter seat out of the filter basket and set the filter basket aside. Pour the ceramic ball out of the filter seat and into your hand. Set the filter seat down and use a small towel to wipe the ceramic ball clean. Do not misplace it. Put the ceramic ball back into the filter seat and then put the filter seat back into the filter basket. Insert the filter basket into the filter body and forcefully pop them together. This may take a couple of tries. Please be sure not to misplace the ceramic ball. Pull on the 2 sections to make sure they are connected securely. Shake the foot filter back and forth once more, verifying the ceramic ball is moving freely. Set the foot filter aside. Grab the PVC suction tubing hanging down from the suction valve and attach the tube connections onto the loose end of the PVC suction tubing and be mindful of the orientation for the tubing connections. Push the collar and nozzle together as close as possible. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle to compress the collar and nozzle tight together, forming a ferrule connection. Grab the foot filter and reattach the tube and tube connections onto the foot filter by hand tightening the tube nut. Do not cross-thread nor over-tighten. If the tube nut is not securing, recheck the ferrule connection. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle once more to compress the collar and nozzle together. Retighten the tube nut until secure. Place the foot filter into the bucket or stock tank. This ensures the foot filter draws chemistry once you begin operation. Air bleed barb. Finally, take the smaller remaining PVC tubing out of the tubing kit. Using diagonal pliers, cut and remove the string holding the tubing together. Locate the manual air bleed barb on the upper left section of the pump head and slide one end of the PVC tubing over the barb. Using the diagonal pliers or cutters, cut the tube so that it is long enough for the chemical bleed off to go back into the bucket or stock tank while priming the eMP pump. The eMP metering pump should now be ready to connect to the power supply. Go through the priming process and begin your next use or treatment. We hope this video has been helpful in rebuilding your eMP metering pump. For more information, please call us at 1-800-451-6628 or visit us online at dilutionsolutions.com. I'm Jason at DS University. Thanks for watching.